Ryan Hayes thought he knew what pressure felt like. Single fatherhood had taught him that. But nothing prepared him for the moment the luxury yacht split apart in the storm, throwing him and his billionaire CEO into a lifeboat with enough supplies for maybe 3 days. Olivia Carter, the woman who controlled boardrooms with a glance, now gripped the side of the boat like her life depended on it. Because it did. No rescue, no signal. Just endless ocean and the two of them, boss and employee, about to find out what happens when power means nothing and survival means everything. If you want to see how far Ryan and Olivia's impossible journey takes them, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. Ryan Hayes had lived 30 years without ever questioning the weight of responsibility. It sat on his shoulders the way morning fog settled over the harbor, quiet, constant, invisible to anyone who wasn't carrying it themselves. He'd been 23 when his son came into the world, barely old enough to vote, definitely not old enough to know what the hell he was doing. The mother left before their boy turned 2. No note, no explanation, just gone. So Ryan learned. He learned how to braid hair from YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning. He learned which fevers meant the ER and which ones just needed a cool washcloth and patience. He learned that being a father wasn't about getting it right every time. It was about showing up every single time, even when you had no idea what you were doing. Now, 7 years later, he worked as a logistics assistant at Carter Maritime Solutions, a shipping empire that moved cargo across 3 continents. The pay was decent. The hours were manageable. It let him be home for dinner most nights, help with homework, tuck his son into bed with a story about pirates or astronauts or whatever his kid's imagination demanded that week. Ryan didn't ask for more than that. He'd stopped dreaming about promotions or corner offices years ago. Those belonged to people who could work weekends and stay late for drinks with the executive team. People without a 7-year-old waiting at home. People like Olivia Carter. Ryan had seen her exactly 11 times in the 3 years he'd worked at Carter Maritime. She didn't walk through the logistics floor often. When she did, conversations died mid-sentence. Keyboards went silent. Even the coffee maker seemed to brew quieter. Olivia Carter wasn't just the CEO, she was the company. Her grandfather had started it with 2 ships and a handshake deal. Her father had expanded it into a regional power. And Olivia? She'd turned it into a global fortress. Forbes called her ruthless. The Wall Street Journal called her visionary. Her competitors just called her terrifying. She was 34, which made her young for the corner office she occupied. She wore tailored suits in shades of charcoal and midnight blue. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a way that suggested she didn't have time for anything frivolous. Not loose curls, not small talk, not second chances. Ryan had spoken to her exactly once. She'd been passing through the logistics bay, tablet in hand, heels clicking against the concrete floor like a countdown timer. He'd been reviewing a shipping manifest when she stopped. Hayes? He'd looked up, startled that she knew his name. Yes, ma'am? The Barcelona route. You flagged a container discrepancy last month. Good eye. That saved us $250,000 in penalties. Just doing my job. Her gaze had been sharp, assessing. Most people don't. Keep it up. Then she was gone, leaving him standing there like he'd just been knighted or possibly threatened. With Olivia Carter, it was hard to tell the difference. So when Ryan's supervisor called him into the office on a Tuesday afternoon and told him he'd been selected for the executive business cruise, his first reaction was confusion. Selected for what? The Pacific Leadership Voyage. 3 days. Executive team, top performers, clients. Ms. Carter handpicked the invitations this year. His supervisor, a man named Greg, who wore the same tie every Thursday, slid a folder across the desk. You're on the list. Ryan opened the folder. Sure enough, there was his name. Ryan Hayes, logistics assistant, printed between a senior director and a vice president of operations. There's got to be a mistake. No mistake. You're expected to board Friday morning, 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Ryan thought about his son, about the babysitter he'd need to arrange, about 3 days away from bedtime stories and soccer practice. Can I decline? Greg's laugh was humorless. You can, but when Olivia Carter personally selects you for something, declining sends a message, and not the kind that helps your career. So Ryan said yes, because that's what responsible people did. They showed up, even when it didn't make sense, even when they'd rather be anywhere else. The yacht was obscene. That was the only word Ryan could find for it as he stood on the dock Friday morning, duffel bag in hand, staring up at the three-story vessel that gleamed white against the morning sky. The name painted across the hull read Poseidon's Fortune, which felt both pretentious and oddly prophetic. First time on one of these? Ryan turned. The woman beside him was maybe 40, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her smile was friendly enough. That obvious? You're the only one not pretending you've seen bigger. She extended her hand. Diane Shu, VP of Client Relations. Ryan Hayes, Logistics. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, surprise she tried to hide. Logistics. Interesting. Usually Olivia keeps these events pretty tight to the C-suite. Yeah, I'm still figuring out why I'm here. Well, whatever you did, you impressed her, and trust me, that's not easy. They boarded together, climbing the gangway onto polished teak decks. Staff in crisp white uniforms offered champagne and orange juice. Ryan took the orange juice. It was 6 in the morning, and he had a feeling he'd need to stay sharp. The yacht was exactly what he expected. All leather and chrome, panoramic windows, a dining room that could seat 20. There was even a hot tub on the upper deck. Ryan found his cabin on the second level, small but immaculate, with a porthole view of the ocean and a bed that looked like it had never been slept in. He unpacked quickly. 3 days. 72 hours. Then he'd be home. Back to his real life, back to what mattered. The first day passed in a blur of presentations and networking. Ryan stayed quiet, mostly listening as executives discussed expansion strategies and market projections. Olivia was everywhere, commanding every room she entered, asking questions that made people sweat, nodding when she heard something worthwhile. She didn't speak to him, didn't even look in his direction. By the second day, Ryan had relaxed slightly. The weather was clear, the ocean was calm. He even managed to enjoy the lunch service, seared scallops and some kind of risotto that melted on his tongue. That evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, he found a quiet spot on the lower deck, away from the cocktail chatter above. He pulled out his phone, hoping for signal. Nothing. They were too far from shore. Not much for parties? He turned. Olivia stood a few feet away, wine glass in hand. She'd changed from the suit she'd worn during the day into something simpler, dark slacks and a cream blouse. Her hair was still pulled back. Just needed some air, Shemet, Ryan said. Understandable. Diane Shu talks enough for 3 people. She moved to the railing beside him, looking out at the water. You've been quiet this trip. Didn't figure anyone wanted to hear from logistics. I invited you for a reason, Hayes. Still trying to figure out what that reason is. She smiled, barely, just a slight curve at the corner of her mouth. You pay attention. You see problems before they become disasters. That's rare. It's just pattern recognition. It's more than that. Most people only see what's directly in front of them. You see connections, consequences. She took a sip of wine. How long have you been with Carter Maritime? 3 years? And before that? Warehouse work, delivery driving, whatever paid the bills. You have a son. It wasn't a question. Ryan wondered how much she knew, if she'd read his file, if HR had briefed her. Yeah, he's 7. That must be difficult. Single father, demanding job. It's not difficult, it's just life. Olivia studied him for a moment. Most people would complain, make excuses. Most people don't have a kid depending on them to show up. Something shifted in her expression, not quite approval, but close. Before she could respond, thunder rumbled across the sky. They both looked up. Dark clouds were rolling in from the west, moving faster than seemed natural. The water, which had been smooth as glass minutes ago, was starting to chop. That doesn't look good, Ryan said. Olivia's jaw tightened. No, it doesn't. By the time they reached the upper deck, the crew was already moving. The captain, a weathered man named Morrison, was barking orders, his face grim. Storm came out of nowhere, he told Olivia. Radar didn't pick it up until 10 minutes ago. It's moving fast. How fast? Fast enough that we need to change course, now. The yacht lurched as a wave hit the starboard side. Someone screamed. Ryan grabbed the railing to steady himself. Everyone below deck, Morrison ordered. Secure all loose items. This is going to get rough. It got worse than rough. Within 20 minutes, the sky had turned the color of bruised iron. Rain hammered the yacht in sheets so thick Ryan could barely see 10 feet ahead. The wind howled like something alive and furious. Waves the size of buildings rolled toward them, lifting the yacht and dropping it with bone-shaking force. Ryan had made it to his cabin, but staying there felt wrong. He could hear people shouting, glass breaking, the groan of metal under stress. He grabbed his life jacket and stepped into the corridor. The yacht tilted hard to port. Ryan slammed into the wall, his shoulder screaming in protest. Emergency lights flickered. Somewhere, an alarm was blaring. He made his way toward the stairs, fighting for balance with every step. When he reached the main deck, chaos greeted him. Water poured through a shattered window. Chairs and tables had broken loose, sliding across the floor like missiles. The crew was trying to secure the lifeboats, but the yacht was pitching so violently it was almost impossible. Then Ryan saw her. Olivia was near the starboard railing, clinging to a support post. Her face was pale, her hair plastered to her skull. She was shouting something, but the wind tore the words away. Ryan moved toward her, half crawling, using anything he could grab for support. A wave crashed over the deck, and suddenly he was underwater, cold, disorienting, brutal. His lungs burned. He kicked hard, broke the surface, gasped for air. When his vision cleared, Olivia was closer. She'd seen him. Their eyes met. "Get to the lifeboat," she screamed. "Not without you." Another wave hit. The yacht groaned, a deep, terrible sound that vibrated through the deck. Then, with a crack that sounded like the world splitting open, the railing gave way. Olivia's eyes went wide. She reached for the post, but her fingers slipped. She was falling, over the edge, into the churning black water below. Ryan didn't think. He lunged, his hand closing around her wrist just as she went over. The momentum dragged him forward, his body slamming against the broken railing. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he held on. "I've got you." "Let go. You'll fall too." "Not happening." He hauled her back inch by inch, his muscles screaming. Olivia scrambled for purchase, her other hand finding his forearm. Together, they pulled her back onto the deck. They collapsed against each other, gasping. Ryan's entire body was shaking. Adrenaline, cold, fear, all of it. "You're insane," Olivia panted. "You're welcome. We need to move, now." She was right. The yacht was listing badly. Water was flooding the lower decks. Ryan looked around, trying to orient himself. Most of the crew and passengers had made it to the lifeboats, but the yacht was sinking faster than anyone had anticipated. "There," Olivia pointed. One lifeboat remained, secured to the davit. It was small, meant for maybe 6 people, but it was their only option. They ran, or tried to. The deck was slick with water and tilted at an angle that made every step a battle. Ryan reached the lifeboat first, yanking at the release mechanism. It didn't budge. "It's jammed!" Olivia shoved him aside, her hands working the mechanism with sharp, precise movements. Whatever else she knew her way around a ship. The davit released with a metallic screech. "Get in!" she ordered. Ryan climbed in, then turned to help her. She grabbed his hand and he pulled her into the small boat just as another wave smashed into the yacht. The impact knocked the lifeboat free. They were falling, a sickening drop, and then they hit the water with a force that rattled Ryan's teeth. The ocean swallowed them. Water poured into the boat. Ryan grabbed the emergency paddle and started bailing, his movements frantic. Olivia did the same, using her hands, a bucket, anything. The yacht loomed above them, a dying giant tilting impossibly far. Ryan watched, numb with shock, as Poseidon's fortune slipped beneath the waves. In less than 2 minutes, it was gone. Just like that, gone. The storm raged on. Waves tossed the lifeboat like a toy. Ryan and Olivia worked in silent desperation, bailing water, gripping the sides, trying not to capsize. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually the wind began to ease, the rain softened. The waves, while still rough, no longer threatened to swallow them whole. Ryan's arms felt like lead. His clothes were soaked through, his ribs throbbed where he'd hit the railing. But they were alive. He looked at Olivia. She was hunched over, breathing hard, her hands gripping the edge of the boat so tightly her knuckles were white. "You okay?" he asked. She laughed, a sharp, almost hysterical sound. "Am I okay? We just survived a shipwreck. The yacht is gone. Everyone else is. She didn't finish. We don't know that. Other lifeboats got out. Rescue teams will be looking. Will they? She turned to him, and for the first time since he'd met her, Olivia Carter looked lost. We're in the middle of the Pacific. No radio, no flares. No idea where we are. Ryan wanted to argue, to offer comfort. But she was right. He opened the storage compartment built into the side of the lifeboat. Inside were emergency supplies, compact, efficient, designed for exactly this scenario. Bottles of water, packets of high-calorie rations, a first aid kit, a hand crank radio, fishing line, a small knife, a reflective blanket, enough to survive. For a while. We'll be okay, Ryan said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Olivia stared at the supplies, then at the endless stretch of water surrounding them. You don't know that. No, but I know giving up doesn't help. She met his eyes. Something passed between them. An understanding, maybe. Or just mutual acknowledgement of how completely screwed they were. The sky began to clear. Stars emerged, bright and indifferent. The ocean settled into a rhythmic roll. Ryan pulled the reflective blanket from the kit and draped it over Olivia's shoulders. She didn't protest. Get some rest, he said. I'll keep watch. For what? I don't know. Ships, planes, anything. Olivia wrapped the blanket tighter. You're the logistics guy. This is probably the worst logistics problem you've ever faced. Ryan almost smiled. Yeah. Little outside my job description. Mine too. She leaned back against the side of the boat, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Ryan stayed awake, watching the horizon. The ocean was vast and dark and utterly indifferent to their survival. Somewhere out there, rescue teams were probably searching. Or maybe not. Maybe they were presumed dead already. He thought about his son, about the promise he'd made the night before he left. That he'd be home soon, that they'd go to the park, that everything would be fine. Ryan pulled his knees to his chest and stared at the stars. He had to get home, whatever it took. The sun rose with painful brightness, turning the ocean into a field of blinding diamonds. Ryan's eyes burned from lack of sleep. His mouth tasted like salt and regret. Olivia woke slowly, blinking against the light. For a moment, confusion crossed her face, like she'd forgotten where she was. Then memory returned, and her expression hardened. How long was I out? Few hours. She sat up, wincing. You should have woken me. You need rest, too. I'm fine. You're not fine. None of this is fine. Ryan didn't argue. He pulled out 2 bottles of water and handed her one. Drink slow. We need to ration. Olivia took the bottle, studying the label like it held answers. How much do we have? 6 bottles of water, maybe 15 ration packs. If we're careful, a week. Maybe more. And then? Then we hope we've been rescued by then. And if we're not? Ryan met her gaze. Then we figure it out. So they sat in silence, sipping water, letting the reality of their situation settle over them like a weight. I've never felt this helpless, Olivia said quietly. You're not helpless. You got that davit unstuck. That saved us. I released a mechanism. You pulled me back from falling off a sinking yacht. Teamwork. She almost smiled. Is that what we're calling it? You have a better word? Desperation. That works too. Ryan pulled out this hand crank radio and started working it. The device was old, clunky, but it was their best shot at communication. He cranked for 5 minutes, then scanned the frequencies. Static. He tried again. More static. Anything? Olivia asked. Not yet, but I'll keep trying. She watched him work, her expression unreadable. Why did you come after me? On the yacht. You could have gotten to the lifeboat faster without me. Ryan stopped cranking. Because leaving you wasn't an option. Most people would have made a different calculation. I'm not most people. No. Olivia's voice was soft. You're not. The day crawled forward. The sun climbed higher, turning the lifeboat into an oven. They took turns sitting under the reflective blanket, trying to shield themselves from the heat. Ryan tried the radio every hour. Nothing but static and the occasional burst of interference. By afternoon, Thirst was becoming an issue. Ryan's lips were cracked. His tongue felt thick. Olivia looked no better. Her skin was flushed, her breathing shallow. "We should drink more," she said. "Not yet. We need to make it last. What if there's no rescue?" "There will be." "You don't know that." "No, but acting like there won't be doesn't help us survive." Olivia looked at him for a long moment. "You're very calm for someone who just lost everything." "I haven't lost everything. My son's still out there." And you think you'll see him again?" "I know I will." "How?" "Because I don't have any other choice." The conviction in his voice seemed to surprise her. She turned away, staring out at the horizon. "I don't have anyone waiting for me," she said quietly. "No family, no partner. The company is all I have, and now—" She gestured at the empty ocean. "Now even that's gone." Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He just sat beside her, two people adrift, holding on to whatever kept them from giving up. On the third day, Olivia spotted land. Ryan had been dozing, exhaustion finally catching up to him when her voice jolted him awake. "Ryan, look." He followed her pointing finger. At first he saw nothing, just more ocean, more horizon. Then his eyes adjusted, and he saw it, a dark smudge against the blue, low and distant, but unmistakably solid. "Is that land?" Olivia breathed. "It has to be." Ryan grabbed the paddle. They'd been drifting with the current for days, too exhausted and dehydrated to do much else. But now, with a destination in sight, energy surged through him. "Help me row." Olivia grabbed the second paddle. Together they started pulling toward the island, if that's what it was. The distance was hard to judge. It could be a mile. It could be 5. They rowed until their shoulders screamed, rested, rowed again. The island grew larger. Ryan could make out details now. Trees, white sand, rocky outcroppings. It wasn't big, maybe a few miles across, but it was land, solid ground, shelter, hope. The lifeboat scraped against sand as they reached the shallows. Ryan jumped out, his legs nearly buckling as his feet touched solid ground for the first time in days. He grabbed the rope and pulled the boat onto the beach while Olivia climbed out. She stood there, swaying slightly, staring at the jungle beyond the sand. "We made it," she whispered. Ryan looked around. The beach was pristine, untouched, no footprints, no buildings, no signs of human life. They were alone, but they were alive. And for now, that was enough. The sand felt strange under Ryan's feet, too soft, too warm, too real after days of nothing but the rocking boat and cold water. He stood there for a moment, just breathing, letting his body remember what solid ground felt like. His legs trembled. Whether from exhaustion or relief, he couldn't tell. Olivia was already moving past him, stumbling toward the tree line like she needed to prove the island was actually there. Ryan watched her go, then turned back to the lifeboat. They couldn't leave it here. High tide could take it, and with it, everything they had left. He grabbed the rope and pulled. The boat scraped across the sand, heavier than it had any right to be. His ribs protested, the ones he'd bruised pulling Olivia back on the yacht. But he kept pulling until the boat was well above the waterline, wedged against a cluster of rocks. By the time he finished, Olivia had returned. Her face was flushed, her breathing hard. "There's fresh water," she said. "I heard it. Running water, inland." Ryan's throat tightened at the thought. They'd been rationing the bottled water carefully, but they were down to 2 bottles. Fresh water meant survival. It meant time. "Show me." They gathered what they could carry, the remaining water bottles, the first aid kit, the knife, some ration packs, and left the rest secured in the boat. The jungle pressed close the moment they stepped off the beach, thick and humid and alive with sounds Ryan couldn't identify. Insects buzzed, birds called. Something rustled in the undergrowth. Olivia led the way, pushing through vines and low-hanging branches. Her designer slacks were torn at the knee. Her blouse, once crisp and white, was stained with salt and dirt. She looked nothing like the woman who'd commanded boardrooms and terrified executives. She looked human. The sound of water grew louder, a steady rushing that pulled them forward. They broke through a wall of ferns and found it. A stream, maybe 6 feet wide, cutting through the jungle floor. The water was clear enough to see the rocks beneath. Ryan dropped to his knees and cupped his hands, lifting the water to his face. It was cold, clean. He drank deeply, the relief so intense it almost hurt. Olivia did the same, her movements less controlled, almost frantic. She drank until she choked, coughing, then drank again. Easy, Ryan said. Too much too fast and you'll make yourself sick. She nodded, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. I know, She didn't finish. She didn't need to. They sat by the stream for a long time, drinking slowly, refilling the empty bottles. The jungle around them pulsed with life, indifferent to their presence. Ryan tried to get his bearings, but the canopy was too thick to see the sun's position clearly. We need to explore, Olivia said finally. Figure out where we are, if there's anyone else here. Agreed. But first we need shelter, somewhere dry. Somewhere we can see if a plane or ship passes. The beach. Too exposed. If it rains, and it will, we'll have nothing. Olivia frowned, looking around. What are you thinking? Something close to the water source, but elevated enough to stay dry. Maybe near the beach so we can signal if we see anything. You've done this before? Camping with my son. Nothing like this, but the principles are the same. Shelter, water, food, in that order. And after that? Ryan met her eyes. After that, we figure out how to get home. They spent the next few hours searching, moving along the stream, looking for a spot that met their needs. The island wasn't large. Ryan estimated maybe 3 miles across at its widest point, but it was dense. Every step required pushing through vegetation or climbing over fallen trees. Eventually, they found it. A clearing on a slight rise, maybe 100 yards from the beach and 20 yards from the stream. The ground was relatively flat, and a massive tree with broad, low-hanging branches provided natural cover. This'll work, Ryan said. Olivia looked skeptical. Work for what, exactly? We don't have tools. We don't have materials. We have a knife. We have hands. We have time. Do we? What if rescue comes tomorrow? Then we'll have wasted a few hours. But if it doesn't come tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, we'll need somewhere to sleep that isn't the sand. Olivia's jaw tightened. She looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she just nodded. Fine. What do you need me to do? Ryan started gathering fallen branches, long, straight ones that could form a frame. Olivia watched for a moment, then began doing the same. They worked in silence, piling the branches near the tree. Ryan used the knife to strip away smaller offshoots, creating cleaner lines. We'll build a lean-to, he explained. Angle the branches against the tree, layer them tight enough to block rain. Then we'll cover it with palm fronds for extra protection. You're very confident for someone who works in logistics. I read a lot, and like I said, camping with a 7-year-old teaches you things. What's his name? Ryan paused, a branch in his hands. What? Your son. You've mentioned him, but you've never said his name. Ethan. Ethan, Olivia repeated like she was testing how it sounded. Does he look like you? Yeah. Same hair, same stubborn streak. Ryan smiled despite everything. Kid's got more guts than I did at his age. Isn't afraid of anything. He must miss you. The words hit harder than Ryan expected. He set the branch down and wiped his hands on his pants. He's with my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She's good with him. But yeah, he's probably scared. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I'm the one who invited you on that cruise. Ryan looked at her. You didn't make the storm happen. No, but if I hadn't picked you, then I'd be home, and you'd be here alone, or worse. He picked up another branch. We can't change what happened. We can only deal with what's in front of us. Olivia didn't respond, but something in her expression softened. They worked until the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The lean-to took shape, crude, uneven, but functional. Ryan tested it by crawling inside. There was just enough room for 2 people to lie down side by side. It'll do, he said, emerging. Olivia crouched and looked inside. It's smaller than my closet. Your closet doesn't keep the rain off. Fair point. They ate a ration pack each, dense, flavorless bars that tasted like cardboard but filled the gnawing emptiness in Ryan's stomach. The jungle darkened quickly once the sun disappeared. Without the yacht's lights, without street lights or buildings, the night was absolute. Ryan built a small fire using dry leaves and friction from a stick, a trick that took him 20 frustrating minutes and left his hands raw. But eventually, a spark caught. The flames spread. Light pushed back the darkness. Olivia sat across from him, knees pulled to her chest, watching the fire. "I've never been anywhere this dark," she said. "City kid? San Francisco, then New York for college, then back to San Francisco. The most rural I've ever been is Napa, and that doesn't count. This is pretty far from wine country." "You think?" Her tone was dry, almost sarcastic. It surprised Ryan. He'd seen her cold, commanding, terrified, but not sarcastic. "You have family in San Francisco?" he asked. "No, my parents are gone. Father had a heart attack 5 years ago. Mother followed 6 months later. Cancer." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was reciting a quarterly report. "No siblings, no cousins I'm close with." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." "We weren't close. They built the company. I just inherited it." "That's not what the business journals say. They say you turned Carter Maritime into what it is today." Olivia's eyes flicked up to his. "You read business journals?" "I work for the company. Figured I should know who's running it." "And what did you learn?" "That you're smart, driven, that you don't tolerate failure." "Anything else?" Ryan hesitated. "That you don't let anyone get close." Olivia's smile was bitter, perceptive, and accurate. She poked at the fire with a stick. "Closeness is a liability. People want things. They have expectations. They leave." "Not everyone." "In my experience, yes. Everyone." Ryan thought about Ethan's mother, about how she'd walked out without looking back, about the nights he'd stayed awake wondering what he'd done wrong. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I get that." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. The jungle around them hummed with night sounds, chirping, buzzing, the occasional distant cry of something Ryan hoped was far away. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said. "Sure." "Why did you really come after me on the yacht? You said it wasn't an option, but there's always an option. You could have saved yourself." Ryan considered the question. He'd been asking himself the same thing for 3 days. "I don't know," he said finally. "Instinct, maybe. I saw you falling and I just moved. Didn't think about it." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Olivia studied him across the flames. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone who'd resent being here. Who'd blame me." "Would that help?" "No. But it would be understandable. I've got a kid who needs me to come home. Blaming you doesn't get me there faster." "You really believe we'll get off this island?" It wasn't a question. Ryan answered anyway. "I have to." Olivia looked away, back to the fire. "I've spent my whole life controlling things, markets, competitors, employees. I built systems so nothing could surprise me. And now," she gestured at the darkness around them, "now I have zero control over anything. Welcome to parenthood." She almost laughed. "Is that what this feels like?" "Pretty much, except with less screaming and more ocean." This time she did laugh, a short, sharp sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised Ryan. "You should sleep," he said. "I'll keep the fire going." "You need sleep too." "I'll sleep after, just a few hours." Olivia looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. She crawled into the lean-to, curling up on the bed of palm fronds Ryan had laid down. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Ryan stayed by the fire, feeding it small sticks, keeping it alive. The night stretched on. His eyes burned, his body ached, but sleep felt dangerous, like if he closed his eyes, everything would disappear. So he stayed awake, watching the flames, thinking about Ethan, about the promise he'd made, about how far away home felt. The fire crackled, the jungle breathed, and Ryan kept watch. When dawn finally broke, Ryan woke Olivia. She emerged from the lean-to looking stiff and uncomfortable but rested. "Your turn," she said. "I'm fine." "You look like hell. Sleep. I'll watch the fire." Ryan wanted to argue, but his body was shutting down. He crawled into the lean-to, and the moment his head touched the ground, sleep took him. He woke to voices. For a disorienting moment, he thought rescue had come. Then he realized it was just Olivia, talking to herself as she fed the fire. "Stupid," she was muttering. Absolutely stupid. Should have checked the weather. Should have turned back. Should have... Should have what? Ryan said, crawling out. Olivia startled. I didn't know you were awake. Hard to sleep through self-recrimination. I wasn't... She stopped. Fine. I was. This is my fault. We've been over this. The yacht was my company's. The trip was my idea. If I'd been more careful. Then what? We'd be in a boardroom instead of an island? Yeah, probably. But we're here, and beating yourself up doesn't change that. Olivia's hands clenched. I don't know how to do this. How to just accept it. You don't have to accept it. You just have to survive it. And then what? And then we go home. You keep saying that like it's guaranteed. Because giving up guarantees we don't. Olivia looked at him, something sharp in her eyes. Do you ever get tired of being the optimistic one? Every single day. That surprised her. Her expression shifted. Then why do it? Because someone has to, and if I don't, who will? She didn't have an answer for that. They spent the morning making the camp more functional. Ryan built a crude rack to dry wood for the fire. Olivia wove palm fronds into rough mats. They carried water from the stream in the bottles, boiling it over the fire just to be safe. Around midday, Ryan decided to explore the island more thoroughly. I'm coming with you, Olivia said when he mentioned it. You should rest. I've rested. I'm not staying here alone. Ryan didn't argue. They set out together, moving along the beach first, scanning the horizon for any sign of ships. Nothing. Just endless blue stretching to the edge of the world. The island was smaller than Ryan had initially thought, maybe 2 miles across at best. The jungle interior was dense and humid, filled with plants Ryan didn't recognize. They found fruit, small, orange, vaguely apple-shaped. Ryan cut one open with the knife. It smelled sweet. Should we try it? Olivia asked. You first. Gee, thanks, Ryan smiled. I'm kidding. We'll test it carefully. Small bite. Wait a few hours. If nothing bad happens, we know it's safe. And if something bad does happen, then we don't eat anymore. They each took a small piece. The fruit was tart, almost citrus-like, not unpleasant. As they moved deeper into the island, Olivia's frustration became more visible. She swatted at branches, stumbled over roots, cursed under her breath when vines caught her hair. This is impossible, she said finally, stopping in a small clearing. We're never getting out of here. We don't know that. Look around, Ryan. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. No radio, no flares, no way to signal anyone. How long do you think we can survive like this? As long as we need to. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Olivia's face flushed. I can't do this. I can't just pretend everything's fine. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to try. Trying doesn't change reality. No, but giving up guarantees the reality you don't want. She stared at him, something breaking in her expression. Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you scared? Who says I'm not? Then why don't you show it? Ryan stepped closer. Because if I fall apart, we both go down. And I've got a kid who needs me to come home. So yeah, I'm scared. I'm terrified, but I can't afford to let that win. Olivia's eyes glistened. For a moment, Ryan thought she might cry. But instead, she turned away, arms crossed, shoulders tight. I don't know how to be helpless, she said quietly. You're not helpless. You're just not in control. There's a difference. Not to me. Ryan let the silence sit between them. Then he said, when Ethan's mother left, I felt like that. Like I'd lost control of everything. I didn't know how to raise a kid alone, didn't know if I'd be any good at it. But I didn't have a choice. So I figured it out, one day at a time. Olivia turned back to him. And you think this is the same? I think we do what we can with what we have. Today, that means finding food and staying dry. Tomorrow, maybe it means something else. But we don't have to figure out everything right now. She studied him for a long moment. You're very calm for someone whose life just got destroyed. My life isn't destroyed, it's just paused. Paused, she repeated, like the word was foreign. Then unexpectedly, she laughed. You're insane. Probably. They continued exploring, moving along the island's perimeter. Near the eastern shore, they found something unexpected. Wreckage. Pieces of wood, twisted metal, fragments of what might have once been a small boat. It was old, weathered, and half buried in sand. Someone else was here, Olivia said. A long time ago. Did they get off? Ryan didn't answer. The wreckage told its own story. As the sun began to set, they made their way back to camp. The fire was still smoldering. Ryan built it back up while Olivia checked the fruit they'd eaten earlier. I don't feel sick, she said. Me neither. We'll try a full piece tomorrow. If that goes well, we have a food source. They ate another ration pack, their supply dwindling. Ryan counted what remained. Maybe 5 days if they stretched it. After that, they'd be relying entirely on the island. That night, they both slept in the lean-to, the space too small for comfort, but better than being alone. Ryan lay on his back, staring at the woven palm fronds above him. Beside him, Olivia was quiet, but he could tell she wasn't asleep. Ryan? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not leaving me. On the yacht. In the water. Here. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know I'm not easy to deal with. You're fine. I'm not. I know I'm not. But you haven't complained, haven't blamed me, and I just wanted you to know I notice. Ryan turned his head. In the darkness, he could just make out her profile. We're going to get through this, he said. How do you know? Because we don't have any other option. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Your son is lucky to have you. Ryan's throat tightened. I'm lucky to have him. They didn't speak again. Eventually, exhaustion pulled them both under. The days began to blur together. Morning meant checking the horizon for ships. Midday meant foraging, fishing with improvised lines, boiling water. Evening meant maintaining the fire and rationing food. Night meant lying in the lean-to, listening to the jungle, trying not to think about how long they'd been gone. The fruit proved safe. They found other edible plants, roots that tasted like bland potatoes, leaves that could be boiled into something resembling tea. Ryan managed to catch a fish using a sharpened stick and patience. It wasn't much, but it was protein. Olivia learned quickly. She stopped complaining about the heat, the bugs, the discomfort. She worked alongside Ryan without hesitation, gathering wood, weaving palm fronds, keeping the fire alive when he slept. But Ryan could see the frustration building in her. She'd try the hand crank radio every few hours, scanning frequencies, hoping for a voice. Nothing ever came through except static. She'd stand on the beach, staring at the horizon until her eyes watered, willing a ship to appear. It never did. On the 7th day, something shifted. Ryan was trying to improve their fishing setup when Olivia appeared, her face flushed, her movements agitated. I'm going to the highest point on the island, she announced. Ryan looked up. Why? Because maybe from there I can see farther. Maybe there's another island. Maybe there's something we're missing. Olivia, shh, don't. Don't tell me it won't help. Don't tell me to be patient. I can't just sit here waiting for rescue that might never come. Ryan set down the fishing line. Then let's go together. No, you need to keep working on this. We need food. And you need to not go alone. I don't need a babysitter. I'm not babysitting. I'm being practical. If you get hurt out there, I need to know where you are. Olivia's jaw clenched. For a moment, Ryan thought she'd argue. Then she nodded, sharp and frustrated. Fine. Let's go. The island's interior rose toward a central hill, not quite a mountain but steep enough to be challenging. They climbed in silence, pushing through dense vegetation, using roots and branches for handholds. Ryan's ribs still ached with every deep breath, but he kept pace. Olivia moved like she was angry at the jungle itself, tearing through vines, shoving branches aside with more force than necessary. Ryan let her have her space. They reached the summit just before noon. The view was staggering, ocean in every direction, blue and endless and empty. Ryan turned slowly, scanning the horizon. Nothing. No land. No ships. No planes. Just water meeting sky in a perfect, indifferent circle. Olivia stood at the edge, breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists. There's nothing, she said. We're completely alone. We knew that already. Knowing and seeing are different. Ryan moved beside her. We'll be okay. Stop saying that. Why? Because you don't know it's true. Her voice cracked on the last word. Ryan turned to face her. You're right, he said quietly. I don't know, but I choose to believe it anyway. Why? Because the alternative is giving up, and I won't do that. Olivia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I've never felt this powerless. I hate it. I know. Do you? Do you really? She stepped closer, her voice rising. You seem fine with all this, like it doesn't bother you. It bothers me every single second. Then why don't you show it? Because if I do, what happens to you? That stopped her. She stared at him, something raw in her expression. I don't need you to protect me, she said. I know, but I'm going to anyway. Why? Ryan didn't have an easy answer, so he told the truth. Because I know what it's like to be alone, and I won't let you feel that way if I can help it. Olivia's composure cracked. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily, but more followed. I'm so tired, she whispered. I'm so tired of fighting. Then don't, not right now. Just be tired. Something broke in her. The tears came harder, her shoulders shaking. Ryan stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, her face pressed into his shoulder. She cried like someone who hadn't let themselves cry in years. Ryan just held her, one hand on her back, saying nothing. The ocean stretched around them, vast and uncaring. Eventually, the tears slowed. Olivia pulled back, wiping her face with her hands. Sorry, she muttered. Don't be. I don't usually. I know. She looked at him, her eyes red but clearer. We should get back. Yeah? They descended in silence, the mood between them different now, not lighter exactly, but less strained. When they reached camp, Olivia went to the stream to wash her face. Ryan rebuilt the fire. That evening, they sat close to the flames, sharing a fish Ryan had caught earlier. It was small, barely enough for two, but it was something. Can I ask you something? Olivia said. Sure. Do you ever regret it? Your son? The responsibility? Ryan thought about it. No, it's hard. Some days are impossible, but I don't regret him. Even though it cost you everything else? It didn't cost me everything. It gave me something more important. Olivia was quiet for a moment. I don't think I'm built for that. For what? Caring about someone more than myself. I think you're wrong. She looked at him, surprised. Why? Because you could have left me behind on the yacht. But you didn't. You waited. You helped with the lifeboat. You've worked just as hard as I have to keep us alive. That's caring. That's survival. It's both. Olivia stared into the fire. My whole life, I've been taught that closeness is weakness, that caring makes you vulnerable. It does. Then why do it? Ryan smiled. Because the alternative is being alone, and that's worse. She didn't respond, but something in her expression shifted. They finished eating and prepared for sleep. As Ryan crawled into the lean-to, Olivia followed. They lay side by side, closer than necessary in the small space. Ryan? Yeah? I'm glad you're here. Me too. It wasn't much. But in the darkness of the lean-to, with the jungle alive around them and the ocean whispering against the shore, it felt like enough. The days that followed took on a rhythm that felt both surreal and oddly domestic. Ryan woke before dawn most mornings, slipping out of the lean-to rebuild the fire, while Olivia still slept. He'd learned her patterns. She was a light sleeper, restless, often waking in the middle of the night to stare at the palm frond ceiling. But in those early hours before sunrise, she'd finally go still, her breathing deep and even. He didn't wake her. She needed the rest. By the time the sun broke over the horizon, Ryan usually had fish roasting over the fire or was boiling water from the stream. Olivia would emerge, her hair tangled, her clothes increasingly worn, and they'd eat in comfortable silence. They'd stop talking about rescue in the mornings. It felt too heavy, too raw. Instead, they talked about small things, what needed fixing at camp, where they'd forage that day, whether the clouds meant rain. It was easier that way. On the 10th day, Olivia caught her first fish. Ryan had been teaching her the technique, patience, stillness, the exact angle to strike with the sharpened stick. She'd been terrible at it initially, too aggressive, scaring the fish away before she got close. But that morning, she'd stayed completely still in the shallows, water up to her knees, eyes locked on a silvery shape drifting near a rock. When she struck, the fish thrashed on the end of the stick. Olivia stumbled backward, nearly dropping it, but recovered and lifted it triumphantly into the air. "I got one," Ryan grinned from the shore. "I see that." "I actually got one." She was laughing, genuinely laughing, and the sound was so unexpected that Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. She waded back to shore, still holding the fish like a trophy. Her smile was wide, unguarded, nothing like the controlled expressions he'd seen in the office. "I can't believe I did that," she said. "You're a natural." "I'm definitely not, but I'll take the win." They cooked the fish together, Olivia talking the entire time about how the fish had moved, how she'd almost missed, how it felt when the stick made contact. Ryan listened, amused by her enthusiasm. This version of Olivia, animated, proud of something as simple as catching dinner, felt more real than the woman who'd commanded a shipping empire. That afternoon, they worked on expanding the shelter. The lean-to had served its purpose, but Ryan wanted something sturdier, something that could handle stronger storms. They spent hours cutting branches, lashing them together with vines, layering palm fronds until they had something that almost resembled a proper structure. "It looks terrible," Olivia said, stepping back to assess their work. "It's functional." "Those aren't the same thing." "On an island in the middle of nowhere?" "Yeah, they are." She smiled despite herself. "Fair point. They were getting better at this, the work, the rhythm, the unspoken coordination. Ryan would start a task, and Olivia would fall in beside him without needing instruction. She anticipated what he needed before he asked, and he did the same for her. It should have felt strange, this easy partnership with a woman who'd barely acknowledged his existence 2 weeks ago. But it didn't. It felt natural. That night, after they'd eaten and the fire had burned down to embers, Olivia asked about Ethan. "What's he like?" "Really like, I mean. Not just the dad version." Ryan poked at the coals with the stick. "He's stubborn. Gets that from me. And he's curious about everything. Wants to know how things work, why things are the way they are. Drives his teachers crazy sometimes. Sounds smart. Too smart for his own good. Last month, he dismantled the toaster trying to figure out why the bread came out brown." Olivia laughed. "Did you get mad?" "Hard to get mad when he's asking legitimate questions. I just made him put it back together." Ryan smiled at the memory. "Took him 3 hours, but he did it, and now he makes his own toast every morning like it's a science experiment." "You're a good father." "I'm a tired father." "Those aren't mutually exclusive." Ryan glanced at her. "What about you? You ever think about kids?" Olivia's expression shifted, something guarded sliding back into place. "No, that life isn't for me." "Why not?" "Because I'd be terrible at it. I don't have the patience. I don't have the—" She gestured vaguely. "Whatever it is that makes people good at that." "You'd be better than you think." "You don't know that. I know you've kept us alive for 10 days. That takes the same skills, problem-solving, adaptability, giving a damn when it matters." Olivia looked at him for a long moment. "It's not the same." "Maybe not, but it's closer than you think." She didn't respond, just turned her attention back to the fire. Ryan let the subject drop. He'd learned when to push and when to give her space. Later, as they settled into the shelter for the night, Olivia spoke into the darkness. "My mother told me once that having children was the end of ambition, that I'd have to choose between a career and a family, and I couldn't have both." Ryan turned his head toward her voice. "That's not true." "Isn't it? You said yourself you stopped going for promotions because of Ethan." "I stopped chasing things that didn't matter. There's a difference." "But you gave things up." "Yeah, and I gained more than I lost." Olivia was quiet. Then, "I don't know if I'd be capable of that, putting someone else first." "You're doing it right now." "What do you mean?" "You could have kept all the food for yourself, could have stayed in the shelter while I worked, but you haven't. You've split everything down the middle, worked just as hard. That's putting someone else on equal footing with yourself. It's a start. That's survival, not sacrifice. Sometimes they look the same." She didn't argue, but Ryan could feel her thinking, turning the words over in her mind. The 11th day brought rain, not the violent storm they'd arrived in, but a steady soaking downpour that lasted from dawn until late afternoon. They stayed in the shelter, listening to water drum against the palm fronds. The roof leaked in 2 places. Ryan and Olivia took turns holding the reflective blanket over the spots, trying to keep their sleeping area dry. "This is miserable." Olivia said. Could be worse. How? Could be a hurricane. That's not comforting. Wasn't trying to be comforting, just factual. She shot him a look, but there was no heat in it. You're infuriating sometimes. I've been told. By who? Ethan. Frequently. That got a smile out of her. When the rain finally stopped, they emerged to find the camp waterlogged but intact. The fire had died, of course, drowned by the deluge. Ryan set about rebuilding it, using the dry kindling they'd stored inside the shelter. It took longer than usual. Everything was damp, but eventually smoke curled upward and a flame caught. You're good at that, Olivia observed. Practice. No, I mean it. You make it look easy. It's not. I just don't show the 20 times it doesn't work. She tilted her head, studying him. You do that a lot, don't you? Make things look easier than they are. Ryan didn't answer right away. He fed the fire carefully, watching the flames grow. Someone has to keep things steady. But who keeps you steady? The question caught him off guard. He looked up, meeting her eyes. I manage. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Olivia's expression softened. You don't have to manage alone anymore. Not here. Something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or just the acknowledgement that they were in this together, however long it lasted. The 12th day started like any other. Ryan checked the fishing spot. Olivia gathered fruit. They boiled water, tended the fire, reinforced a weak spot in the shelter's roof. Routine. Survival. But around midday, Olivia disappeared. Ryan didn't notice at first. He was focused on sharpening their makeshift spear, working the blade of the knife against a smooth stone. When he finally looked up, she was gone. Olivia? No response. He stood, scanning the beach, the tree line, the stream. Nothing. A knot of worry formed in his stomach. She wouldn't have gone far without telling him. They'd established that rule early. Always let the other person know where you were going, unless she hadn't planned to go far. Unless something had happened. Ryan grabbed the knife and set off toward the interior of the island, calling her name. The jungle swallowed his voice. He pushed through ferns and vines, following the path they usually took to the stream, but she wasn't there. He expanded his search, moving faster now, the worry solidifying into fear. The island wasn't that big, but it was dense enough to get turned around, easy enough to step wrong and twist an ankle or worse. Olivia! Still nothing. Then he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A scraping, rhythmic, coming from the direction of the hill they'd climbed days ago. Ryan ran. He found her halfway up the slope, dragging a long, heavy branch behind her. Her face was flushed, sweat soaking her torn blouse. She was breathing hard, her movements jerky and desperate. What are you doing? She didn't stop. I'm building a signal. Ryan looked past her. At the top of the hill, she'd already piled rocks and branches in a rough approximation of an SOS. But the structure was unstable, leaning badly to one side. Olivia, stop. No. If a plane flies over, they need to see something. This might be our only chance. We can build a signal together, tomorrow, when we have a plan. I have a plan. She yanked the branch forward another foot. This is it. But Ryan moved in front of her, blocking her path. You're going to hurt yourself. I don't care. Well, I do. She tried to push past him. Ryan caught her arm. Stop. Let go of me. Not until you tell me what's going on. What's going on? Her voice rose, sharp and jagged. We've been here almost 2 weeks, Ryan. 2 weeks, no rescue, no ships, no planes, nothing. And I can't just sit around the fire pretending everything's fine. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to be smart. Smart would have been staying on shore instead of getting on that yacht in the first place. You couldn't have known. I should have. I should have checked the weather. I should have listened to Morrison when he said the radar looked strange. But I didn't because I never listen. And now we're stuck here, and it's my fault. It's not. Yes, it is. She jerked her arm free, stumbling backward. I did this. I put us here, and I have to fix it. You can't fix it alone. Then what am I supposed to do? Just wait? Just hope someone finds us before we run out of food or get sick or... Her foot came down on loose rocks. Ryan saw it happen in slow motion, the way her ankle twisted, the way her arms pinwheeled, trying to catch balance that wasn't there. She fell hard, her shoulder hitting the slope, her body rolling several feet before slamming into a tree. Ryan was beside her in seconds. "Don't move." "I'm fine," but her voice was tight with pain. "You're not fine. Where does it hurt?" "Everywhere." He ran his hands carefully over her arms, her legs, checking for breaks. When he touched her left ankle, she hissed. "That?" "Yeah." Ryan examined it as gently as he could. It was already swelling, the skin around the joint turning purple. Not broken, probably, but badly sprained. "Can you stand?" "I don't know." "Try." He helped her up. The moment she put weight on the injured ankle, her face went white. Her knees buckled. Ryan caught her before she fell again. "Okay, new plan. I'm carrying you." "You can't." "I'm carrying you." Before she could argue, he scooped her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe adrenaline made her feel that way. She tensed initially, then relaxed against him, one arm looping around his neck. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Save it." The descent was brutal. Ryan's legs screamed. His ribs throbbed with every step, but he didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't put her down until they reached the camp. He lowered her carefully onto the sleeping mats inside the shelter, propping her injured foot on a rolled-up palm frond to elevate it. "Stay here." "Where else would I go?" Ryan ignored the sarcasm and went to the stream, soaking a piece of cloth in cold water. When he returned, he wrapped it around her ankle, trying to bring down the swelling. Olivia winced but didn't complain. She just watched him work, her expression unreadable. "You didn't have to carry me," she said finally. "Yeah, I did." "Why?" Ryan looked up at her. "Because leaving you wasn't an option. I thought we established that. On a sinking yacht, maybe. But this is the same thing. You needed help. I helped. I'm not used to people doing that." "I know." She was quiet for a moment, then, "I really screwed up. You made a mistake. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah, screwing up means you didn't care. You cared too much. That's different." Olivia's eyes glistened. "I just wanted to do something. Anything. I hate feeling useless." "You're not useless. You're hurt. And you're frustrated. Both of those are understandable. But stupid. Human." She looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression cracked open. "I don't know how you do it." "Do what?" "Stay calm. Stay positive. I would have lost my mind by now if you weren't here." "You're stronger than you think." "I'm really not." Ryan sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You survived a shipwreck. You've lived on an island for almost 2 weeks with minimal supplies. You learned to fish, to build shelter, to keep going when everything fell apart. That's not weakness. It doesn't feel like strength. Strength never does. Not when you're in the middle of it." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. The gesture was small, tentative, like she wasn't sure if it was allowed. Ryan didn't move. He just sat there, letting her lean, letting her have whatever comfort she needed. "What if we never get off this island?" she asked quietly. "Then we make a life here." "You say that like it's simple." "It's not simple, but it's possible." "You really believe that?" "I have to." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I've spent my whole life running from things like this. Situations I can't control. People I can't predict. I built walls so high nothing could get through. And now? Now I'm stuck on an island with someone who sees right through them." Ryan smiled despite everything. "Sorry." "Don't be." She turned her head slightly, her breath warm against his neck. "I think I needed this. Needed someone to see me, not just the CEO. You're more than that title." "I know, but I forget sometimes." They sat like that until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Ryan eventually moved to prepare dinner, keeping an eye on Olivia while he worked. She stayed in the shelter, resting, her injured foot still elevated. When he brought her food, roasted fish and fruit, she took it with a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not leaving me. On the hill. You could have." "No, I couldn't." "Why not?" Ryan met her eyes. "Because you matter." The words hung between them, simple and true. Olivia's breath caught. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, slightly rough from days of manual work. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They ate in silence, hands still linked, the fire crackling softly between them and the encroaching darkness. That night, after Ryan had checked her ankle again, still swollen, still painful, but not worsening, they settled into the shelter. The space felt smaller with both of them inside, their bodies closer than necessary. "Ryan?" "Yeah?" "I'm scared." Her voice was barely a whisper, but the admission felt enormous. Ryan turned toward her. "I know. I've never been this scared. Not when my father died. Not when I took over the company. Not ever." Well, fear means you still care about what happens next. That's not a bad thing. It feels bad. I know. She shifted closer, and suddenly there was no space between them. Ryan could feel the heat of her body, smell the salt and smoke in her hair. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always? Do you think about kissing me?" The question hit him like a physical blow. His heart rate spiked. He should deflect. Should make a joke. Should create distance. Instead, he told the truth. "Yeah, I do." "Why haven't you?" "Because you're vulnerable. Because we're stuck here. Because I didn't want you to think I was taking advantage." Olivia's hand found his face in the darkness, her thumb tracing his jaw. "What if I wanted you to?" Ryan's breath caught. "Olivia, I'm not vulnerable right now. I'm asking." Her voice was steady, clear. "I'm asking because I want to know what it feels like. To let someone in. To stop being afraid." Ryan's resolve crumbled. He leaned forward, closing the distance, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was raw and desperate, and full of 2 weeks of tension and fear and need. Olivia's hands tangled in his hair. Ryan pulled her closer, careful of her injured ankle, his hands finding her waist, her back, everywhere. She kissed like she did everything else, fully, completely, without reservation. And Ryan met her there, matching her intensity, giving her everything he had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Olivia pressed her forehead against his. "I've never felt this before," she whispered. "Felt what?" "Safe. Even here. Even now. You make me feel safe." Ryan's chest tightened. He kissed her again, softer this time, slower. And when they finally settled into sleep, tangled together in the small shelter, the jungle alive around them and the ocean whispering against the shore, it felt less like survival and more like something else entirely. Something that terrified him almost as much as the shipwreck had. Because unlike the ocean, unlike the island, this was something he couldn't afford to lose. Morning came too bright and too real. Ryan woke to sunlight streaming through gaps in the palm fronds, and Olivia's head resting against his chest, her breathing still deep and even. For a moment he stayed completely still, afraid that moving would shatter whatever fragile thing had formed between them in the darkness. Then reality crashed back. Her ankle. The camp. Survival. He shifted carefully, trying not to wake her, but her eyes opened anyway. She blinked up at him, and for a split second uncertainty flickered across her face, like she was trying to remember if last night had actually happened, or if exhaustion and fear had conjured it. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi. Did we—" "Yeah." A small smile touched her lips. "Okay. Good. Just checking." Ryan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "How's the ankle?" "Hurts less than my pride." "That's not an answer." She shifted, testing the injured joint. Her face tightened. "Still bad, but I'll live." "You need to stay off it, at least a few days. I can't just lie here while you do everything. Watch me make you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Bossy." "Practical." "Same thing." Despite everything, Ryan smiled. He carefully extracted himself from the tangle of limbs and moved outside to rebuild the fire. The morning air was cool, the sky clear. Another day in paradise. Another day stranded. He got the fire going and boiled water while Olivia remained in the shelter. When he brought her breakfast, fruit and a fish he'd caught the previous afternoon, she took it with a grateful look. "You don't have to wait on me," she said. "I'm not waiting on you. I'm making sure you heal." "Still sounds like waiting on me." "Then consider it payback for all the times you've kept the fire going while I slept." She studied him over the fruit in her hands. Last night? We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I want to? She set the food aside. I just don't know what to say. Ryan sat beside her at the entrance to the shelter, close enough that their shoulders touched. Then don't say anything. That feels wrong, like I'm avoiding it. You're not avoiding it, you're just processing. Olivia laughed softly. Is that what we're calling it? You have a better word? No. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I've never done this before. Done what? Let someone in. Actually let them in, I mean. Not just, she gestured vaguely, surface level things. How does it feel? Terrifying. Yeah, it usually is. They sat in silence for a while, eating, watching the ocean. The waves rolled in with their endless rhythm, indifferent to everything happening on the shore. Tell me more about Ethan, Olivia said eventually. Ryan glanced at her. What do you want to know? Everything. What he likes. What he's afraid of. What you guys do together. So Ryan told her. He told her about Ethan's obsession with dinosaurs that had lasted for 2 solid years, about the time his son had tried to build a time machine out of cardboard boxes and duct tape, about the way he'd cry during sad movies but pretend he had something in his eye. He told her about Saturday morning pancakes, about the park 3 blocks from their apartment, about bedtime stories that always ran 20 minutes longer than planned because Ethan asked too many questions. Olivia listened without interrupting, her expression soft in a way Ryan had never seen before. He sounds wonderful, she said when Ryan finally ran out of stories. He is, most of the time. Other times, he's a nightmare. That's allowed. Yeah, but it doesn't make it easier. Do you think... Olivia stopped, then started again. Do you think he's okay? Without you? The question hit Ryan in the chest. He'd been trying not to think about it, trying to focus on survival rather than the growing chasm of time between him and home. I hope so. Mrs. Chen is good with him, but yeah, I think about it. Every day. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Feels like it is. Ryan turned to face her fully. We've been over this. The storm wasn't your fault. The shipwreck wasn't your fault. And even if it was, which it's not, beating yourself up doesn't change where we are. I know. Logically, I know. But logic doesn't always win. No, it doesn't. Olivia's hand found his. When we get back, if we get back, do you think things will be different? Between us? Between everything. The company. My life. Your life. All of it. Ryan considered the question. I don't know. Probably. Hard to go through something like this and not be changed by it. That's what scares me. Why? Because I don't know who I'll be on the other side, and I don't know if that person will fit back into the life I had. Maybe that life wasn't the right fit to begin with. Olivia looked at him, something vulnerable in her eyes. What if I mess this up? Whatever this is between us. What if I don't know how to be... She gestured helplessly. Whatever you need me to be. I don't need you to be anything except yourself. That's the problem. I'm not sure I know who that is anymore. Ryan squeezed her hand. Then we'll figure it out together. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible. She smiled, small and uncertain. You really believe that, don't you? That things work out? I believe they can, if we don't give up. And if they don't, then at least we tried. Olivia leaned forward and kissed him, soft and brief. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Thank you, she said. For what? For not running. For staying. For... She shook her head. All of it. Over the next few days, they fell into a new rhythm. Olivia's ankle improved slowly, the swelling going down, the pain becoming manageable. Ryan insisted she stay off it as much as possible, which meant he took over most of the physical work, fishing, gathering, maintaining the fire. She didn't argue as much as he expected. Instead, she found other ways to contribute. She organized their remaining supplies, creating an inventory system that made it easier to track what they had left. She wove more palm fronds into mats and baskets. She even improved the shelter's roof, sitting inside and patching weak spots Ryan had missed. They talked more than they had before, not just about survival logistics, but about real things. Olivia told him about growing up in her father's shadow, about the pressure to prove herself, about the loneliness of the corner office. Ryan told her about the early days with Ethan, about the fear that he'd screw up irreparably, about the small moments of joy that made all the hard parts worth it. At night, they slept tangled together in the shelter, the space feeling less like a survival necessity and more like a choice. On the 15th day, Olivia could finally walk with only a slight limp. She insisted on joining Ryan for the morning fishing, despite his protests. "I've been sitting around for days," she said. If I don't move, I'm going to lose my mind. Your ankle is fine, or fine enough." Ryan knew better than to argue when she used that tone. They walked to the shallows together, moving slowly, Ryan keeping close in case she stumbled. She didn't. She was steady, focused, her movements careful but confident. They fished in comfortable silence, the water cool around their legs, the sun warm on their backs. Olivia caught 2 fish. Ryan caught 3. They brought them back to camp and cooked them over the fire, the smell rich and savory. "I never thought I'd be proud of catching fish," Olivia said, watching them roast. "It's a good skill. It's a necessary skill. There's a difference." "You're allowed to be proud anyway." She smiled. "I suppose I am." That afternoon, they explored the western side of the island, a section they hadn't thoroughly searched yet. The terrain was rockier there, the jungle less dense. They moved carefully, Olivia testing her ankle on the uneven ground. Near a cluster of boulders, they found something unexpected. A tidal pool, wide and clear, filled with small fish and colorful shells. Olivia crouched at the edge, peering into the water. "It's beautiful," she said. Ryan knelt beside her. "Yeah." She reached down and scooped up a shell, smooth and spiral-shaped, striped in shades of brown and cream. "Do you think Ethan would like this?" The question caught Ryan off guard. "Yeah, he'd love it." "Then you should bring it back for him." "We don't know if—" "When," Olivia corrected firmly. "When we get back." "Not if." Ryan took the shell, turning it over in his hands. It was such a small thing, but the weight of it felt enormous. A piece of this place, a reminder of what they'd survived. "Thank you," he said quietly. Olivia stood, brushing sand from her knees. "When we get back, I want to meet him." Ryan looked up at her. "You do?" "Of course I do. He's important to you. That makes him important to me." Something tightened in Ryan's chest. "You mean that?" "I wouldn't say it if I didn't." Ryan stood and pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, her hands wrapping around his waist, her head resting against his chest. "I'm terrified of going back," she admitted quietly. "Why?" "Because out here, it's just us. No expectations, no roles to play. But back there," she pulled back slightly to look at him. "Back there, I'm a CEO. You're an employee. People will have opinions, the board, the media, everyone. So what? So it's complicated. Life's complicated. Doesn't mean it's not worth it. You make everything sound so straightforward." "It is straightforward. We care about each other. The rest is just noise." Olivia's eyes searched his face. "What if the noise is too loud?" "Then we tune it out. And if we can't?" Ryan cupped her face in his hands. "Then we deal with it together, just like we've dealt with everything else." She kissed him then, deep and urgent, like she was trying to memorize the feel of him. Ryan kissed her back with the same intensity, his hands tangling in her hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Olivia rested her forehead against his. "I don't want to lose this," she whispered. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let you." They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other while the ocean whispered against the rocks, and the sun climbed higher in the endless blue sky. That night Ryan woke to find Olivia sitting at the entrance to the shelter, staring out at the ocean. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the water. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She turned, startled. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." Ryan moved to sit beside her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I was just thinking." "About?" "About what happens next, after we're rescued." "You're sure we'll be rescued now?" A small smile touched her lips. "You're rubbing off on me." "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's just Different. Ryan waited, giving her space to find the words. I've been thinking about the company, she said finally. About whether I even want to go back to it. That surprised him. You've spent your whole life building Carter Maritime. Well, I've spent my whole life living up to my father's expectations. That's not the same thing. What would you do instead? I don't know. That's the terrifying part. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. I don't know what I want. That's okay. Is it? Yeah. Not knowing means you get to figure it out. That's a gift, not a curse. Olivia leaned against him. I want to be with you. I know that much. Ryan's heart kicked against his ribs. Yeah? Yeah. But I don't know how to make that work with everything else. We'll figure it out. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She was quiet for a moment, then, what do you want? When we get back, I mean. What does your life look like? Ryan thought about it. I want to be a good father. I want Ethan to feel safe and loved. Beyond that, he shrugged. I haven't let myself want much else. Why not? Because wanting things feels dangerous when you're barely holding it together. But you're not barely holding it together. Not anymore. Maybe not. But old habits are hard to break. Olivia turned to face him fully. If you could have anything, no limits, no restrictions, what would you want? This, Ryan said simply. This? You. A life where I don't have to choose between being a father and being happy. Where I can have both. Olivia's eyes glistened. You really think that's possible? With you? Yeah, I do. She kissed him again, slow and tender, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest, a certainty that had been building for days but finally solidified into something he could name. He was in love with her. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it felt inevitable, like every moment since the yacht sank had been leading to this. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat together watching the moonlight dance on the water. Ryan? Yeah? When we get back, I'm going to need you to be patient with me. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to get scared and try to run. It's what I do. I know. And you're okay with that? No, but I'm willing to work through it. She laughed softly. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. They stayed like that until the sky began to lighten, the first hints of dawn creeping over the horizon. And when they finally returned to the shelter, exhaustion pulling them back to sleep, Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real, tangible hope that they'd make it home, that they'd find a way to make this work, that he wouldn't have to choose between the life he'd built and the future he wanted. The 17th day brought a shift in the weather. The air felt heavy, charged with something Ryan couldn't quite name. He mentioned it to Olivia over breakfast. Storm coming, he said. She looked at the clear sky skeptically. How do you know? The air, the way the birds are acting. Trust me. Should we prepare? Yeah, we need to secure everything, make sure the shelter can handle wind and rain. They spent the day reinforcing the structure, gathering extra firewood and storing it inside, moving their supplies to higher ground. By late afternoon, clouds were rolling in from the west, dark and ominous. You were right, Olivia said. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not, just impressed. The storm hit just after sunset. Rain hammered the shelter, wind tearing at the palm fronds. But their reinforcements held. Water leaked in a few places, but nothing catastrophic. They huddled together in the center of the shelter, the reflective blanket wrapped around them, listening to the fury outside. Reminds me of the shipwreck, Olivia said quietly. Yeah. Except this time I'm not terrified. Ryan looked at her. Why not? Because you're here. Because I know we'll get through it. That's growth. She smiled. Don't let it go to your head. The storm lasted through the night. By morning, the island was drenched but intact. They emerged from the shelter to find branches scattered across the beach, the fire pit flooded, but no major damage. As Ryan surveyed the camp, Olivia grabbed his arm. Ryan, look. She was pointing toward the ocean. Ryan followed her gaze and felt his heart stop. There, on the horizon, was a ship. It was distant, barely more than a speck, but it was unmistakably there. A cargo vessel, maybe, or a fishing boat, moving parallel to the island. "We need to signal," Olivia said, already moving. Ryan ran to the shelter and grabbed the small mirror from their emergency supplies. They'd talked about using it for signaling, but had never had a reason until now. They climbed to the highest point on the beach, Olivia moving as fast as her healing ankle would allow. Ryan angled the mirror, catching the morning sun, flashing it toward the ship in the pattern he remembered from some half-forgotten survival guide. 3 short flashes. 3 long. 3 short. SOS. Again and again he flashed the signal. Beside him, Olivia waved her arms, shouting even though there was no way the ship could hear her. "Are they turning?" she asked desperately. Ryan squinted against the sun. "I can't tell." They had 1 flare left, the final emergency flare from the lifeboat. Ryan had been saving it, waiting for the perfect moment. This was it. He ran back to the boat, grabbed the flare, and returned to Olivia. His hands shook as he pulled the tab. The flare shot into the sky with a sharp crack, trailing red smoke. It arced high, bright against the blue, hanging there for what felt like an eternity before fading. They waited, watching, hoping, and then slowly and possibly, the ship began to turn. "They saw us," Olivia breathed. "They saw us." Ryan pulled her into his arms, and she was laughing and crying at the same time, her hands fisting in his shirt. "We're going home," she said. "We're actually going home." Ryan held her tight, relief and joy and something more complicated flooding through him. Because going home meant facing everything they'd been avoiding, and he had no idea if what they'd built on this island could survive the real world. The ship was a commercial fishing vessel out of Taiwan, its crew bewildered to find 2 bedraggled Americans waving from an uncharted island. The captain, a weathered man named Chen who spoke broken English, offered them water, blankets, and a radio to contact the Coast Guard. Ryan's hand shook as he held the receiver, calling the emergency line, giving their names and approximate location. The operator's voice cracked with static, but the words came through clear enough. They'd been presumed dead. Search and rescue had been called off after 10 days. Olivia stood beside him, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like diesel and fish, her face unreadable. When Ryan finished the call, she took the receiver and made one of her own, to her assistant, to the company, to someone who could start managing the aftermath of her miraculous return. Her voice was steady, professional. The CEO was back. Ryan felt the shift immediately, like a door closing between them. They sailed for 2 days before reaching Taiwan. The crew gave them a small cabin to share, brought them rice and soup, asked no questions about why they stood on the deck together for hours, watching the endless ocean pass by in silence. On the second night, Olivia finally spoke. "When we dock, there will be cameras, reporters. The board will have questions, so will the authorities." Ryan nodded. He'd been thinking about it too. "We should coordinate our story," she continued. "Keep it simple. The yacht sank. We made it to a lifeboat. We survived on the island until rescue. That is the story. I mean," she hesitated. "We don't need to mention everything." Ryan turned to face her. "You mean us?" "I mean keeping our private lives private." "Is that what this is? A private life you're already trying to hide?" Olivia's expression tightened. "That's not fair, isn't it? We've been rescued for 48 hours, and you're already planning how to pretend nothing happened between us." "I'm not pretending nothing happened. I'm being realistic. You have a son. I have a company. The media will turn this into a circus if they find out. So what? Let them." "You don't understand what you're saying. The scrutiny, the speculation. It'll touch everything. Your job, your custody arrangement, Ethan's privacy." That landed. Ryan's jaw clenched. "Don't use my son to justify running scared." "I'm not running. I'm protecting both of us." "From what? From people knowing we care about each other?" "From a mistake that could ruin everything we've worked for." The word hung between them like a detonation. Mistake. Ryan felt something crack inside his chest. "Is that what I am to you?" Olivia's face went pale. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "I meant this is complicated. More complicated than you're willing to admit." "No, it's only complicated if you make it complicated." "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who'll be on every business magazine cover with headlines questioning your judgment. You're not the one whose board of directors will use this as ammunition to push you out. And you're not the one who's going to watch your kid's life get turned upside down because reporters camp outside his school. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the space between them feeling wider than the ocean they'd crossed. I can't do this, Olivia said finally, her voice breaking. I can't be what you need and run the company and survive the fallout. Something has to give. So you're choosing the company. I'm choosing to be smart. You're choosing to be a coward. Olivia flinched like he'd slapped her. You don't get to judge me for this. You don't know what it's like to sacrifice for someone you love. Yeah, Olivia, I have no idea what that's like. She turned away, arms wrapped around herself. I can't be your second chance at happiness, Ryan. I can't be the thing that makes your life make sense. That's too much pressure. I never asked you to be that. Didn't you? She turned back, tears streaming down her face. Every time you looked at me like I was worth saving, every time you told me we'd figure it out, you were asking me to be something I don't know how to be. Ryan's anger drained away, leaving only exhaustion. I was asking you to try. I know, and I can't. I'm sorry. The ship's horn blew, signaling their approach to port. Below deck, the crew was preparing to dock. Ryan looked at the woman he'd fallen in love with on an island in the middle of nowhere and saw the walls rebuild themselves in real time. The CEO. The untouchable fortress. The person who'd spent a lifetime learning that closeness was weakness. He'd known this was coming, had felt it in the way she'd pulled back the moment rescue arrived, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. I hope it's worth it, he said quietly. What? Being alone. Being in control. I hope it's worth what you're giving up. Olivia's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She just turned and walked away, disappearing below deck. Ryan stayed on the deck until Taiwan materialized on the horizon, lights and buildings, and the promise of everything he'd been desperate to return to. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like an ending. The port was chaos. Coast Guard officials, company representatives, medical personnel, and cameras. So many cameras, their flashes turning the dock into a strobe-lit nightmare. Ryan was separated from Olivia immediately, taken to a medical tent for evaluation, dehydration, malnutrition, minor infections, a bruised rib that had started healing wrong. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to warrant monitoring. He answered questions mechanically. Yes, they'd survived in a lifeboat. Yes, they'd found an island. Yes, they'd managed to find food and water. No, he didn't know the exact coordinates. No one asked about Olivia, about what it had been like, just the two of them, for 17 days. He was grateful for that. He didn't know what he'd say if they did. After 6 hours of questions and examinations, a Coast Guard officer told him his son was waiting. Ryan's heart stopped. Ethan's here? Flew in with your neighbor this morning. He's in the visitor area. Ryan didn't remember walking there, didn't remember the hallways or the doors or the faces of people he passed. He just remembered seeing his son, small and real and whole, standing next to Mrs. Chen. Dad! Ethan ran. Ryan dropped to his knees and caught him, pulling his son against his chest so hard it hurt his ribs, and he didn't care. Ethan was crying, his small hands fisting in Ryan's shirt, his whole body shaking. I thought you were dead, Ethan sobbed. They said you were dead. I'm here. I'm okay. I'm right here. Don't leave again. Please don't leave again. Ryan's throat closed. He held his son tighter, one hand cradling the back of Ethan's head. I won't. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. Mrs. Chen stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face. Ryan mouthed, "Thank you," over Ethan's head. She nodded, wiping her eyes. They stayed like that for a long time, Ryan on his knees, Ethan clinging to him, both of them crying. And for the first time since the ship had appeared on the horizon, Ryan felt something other than loss. He felt home. The flight back to San Francisco was a blur. Ethan refused to let go of Ryan's hand the entire time, even when he fell asleep. Ryan watched his son breathe, memorizing the curve of his cheek, the way his hair fell across his forehead. This was what mattered. Not the company, not the media circus, not even Olivia, as much as it hurt to admit. This. When they landed, more cameras waited. Ryan kept Ethan close, one arm wrapped protectively around his shoulders, shielding him from the flashes. A company car was waiting, sent by Carter Maritime, though Ryan doubted Olivia had arranged it personally. The driver took them home. Their apartment looked exactly the same, toys scattered across the living room floor, dishes in the sink from breakfast 17 days ago, Ethan's dinosaur poster on the wall. But Ryan felt different walking through the door, like he'd left part of himself somewhere in the Pacific. That night, after Ethan had finally fallen asleep in his own bed, Ryan sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee he didn't drink and stared at his phone. No messages from Olivia. He hadn't expected any, but the absence still carved out a space in his chest that nothing seemed to fill. The next morning, Carter Maritime's HR department called. They wanted him to come in. Just routine follow-up, they said. Nothing to worry about. Ryan knew better. He arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch Ethan and took the bus to the office. The building looked different now, glass and steel and corporate power. He'd worked here for 3 years and never felt like he belonged. Now he felt like a ghost. The HR director, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes and a rehearsed smile, sat him down in a conference room. "First, let me say how relieved we are that you're safe," she began. "The entire company has been following your story. Thank you. We wanted to discuss your transition back to work. Given everything you've been through, we understand if you need time. How much time?" Patricia slid a folder across the table. "We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package, 6 months' salary, continued health insurance, a strong reference." Ryan stared at the folder. "You're firing me." "We're offering you an opportunity to transition. You're firing me." Patricia's smile faltered. "The board feels it's best, given the circumstances, to make a clean break. The media attention. She hesitated. "The optics." "The optics of what?" "Mr. Hayes, you and Ms. Carter were alone together for over 2 weeks. People are going to speculate. The company needs to distance itself from any potential scandal." Ryan laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "So I survive a shipwreck and get fired for it." "You're not being fired. You're being given options. Options that include leaving. Options that include protecting your son from unwanted attention." That was the card they were playing. Ethan. Ryan's hands clenched under the table. "Does Olivia know about this?" Patricia's expression gave nothing away. "Ms. Carter has recused herself from all personnel decisions involving you." Of course she had. Ryan stood. "Keep your severance. I'll resign effective immediately." "Mr. Hayes, I'll sign whatever you need me to sign, but I'm done." He walked out of the conference room, out of the building, out of the life he'd built for 3 years. And he felt nothing but relief. 2 weeks passed. Ryan focused on Ethan, on rebuilding routines, on helping his son process the trauma of thinking he'd lost his father. They went to the park. They made pancakes on Saturday. They talked about dinosaurs and math homework and everything except the island. Ethan asked about it once. What was it like, being stuck there? Ryan had chosen his words carefully. "Scary sometimes, but I knew I had to get back to you. That kept me going." "Were you alone?" "No. My boss was there too. We helped each other survive." "Is she nice?" Ryan's throat tightened. "Yeah, she's nice." Ethan had accepted that and moved on, satisfied. Kids were good at that, taking what they needed and leaving the rest. Ryan wished he could do the same. He found a new job within a week, a smaller logistics company, better hours, less pay, but enough to get by. His new boss didn't care about media attention or corporate optics. He just needed someone who could do the work. Ryan could do the work. Life settled into something resembling normal, except for the hollow space in his chest that wouldn't close, except for the nights he lay awake thinking about palm fronds and firelight and the way Olivia had looked at him when she thought no one was watching. He told himself it would fade. That time would heal it. He told himself a lot of things. 3 weeks after returning to San Francisco, Ryan was walking Ethan home from school when his son pointed at a newsstand. "Dad, look, it's your boss lady." Ryan's stomach dropped. There, on the cover of a business magazine, was Olivia. The headline read, "Carter Maritime CEO Breaks Silence on Survival Story." Ryan bought the magazine. That night, after Ethan was asleep, he read it. The article was everything he expected, carefully crafted, professionally distant. Olivia talked about the storm, the shipwreck, the island. She praised the crew that rescued them. She thanked the search teams that had tried to find them. She mentioned Ryan exactly once. I couldn't have survived without the calm, capable assistance of my colleague. Colleague. Ryan closed the magazine and threw it in the trash. The next morning, Mrs. Chen knocked on his door. She was holding an envelope. This came for you, hand-delivered. The return address was Carter Maritime's headquarters. Ryan's first instinct was to throw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Inside was a check, the severance package he'd refused, and a note, handwritten on expensive cardstock. You earned this. Please accept it. For Ethan. O.C. Ryan stared at the check. It was more money than he'd see in 6 months at his new job. Money that could pay for Ethan's school, for the medical bills from Taiwan, for breathing room he desperately needed. But taking it felt like accepting the ending she'd written. He almost tore it up. Almost. Instead, he deposited the check and wrote his own note. Thank you. I hope you find what you're looking for. He didn't expect a response. Didn't get one. October turned into November. The media moved on to other stories. Ryan's life continued. Work, Ethan, the daily grind of single parenthood. It was enough. It had to be enough. But some nights, when the apartment was quiet and Ethan was asleep, Ryan would take out the shell Olivia had found in the tidal pool. He'd turn it over in his hands, remembering her voice when she'd said, "When we get back, I want to meet him." She'd meant it then. He was sure of that. But meaning something and following through were different things. The knock came on a Wednesday evening in late November. Ryan was helping Ethan with homework, fractions that neither of them fully understood, when someone rapped on the apartment door. Ryan opened it and froze. Olivia stood in the hallway wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nervous, uncertain, human. "Hi," she said. Ryan couldn't speak, couldn't process that she was actually here, standing in his hallway, looking at him like, "Can I come in?" she asked. Yeah, of course." He stepped aside. Olivia walked past him, her eyes scanning the small apartment, the toys on the floor, the dishes in the sink, the homework spread across the kitchen table. Ethan looked up from his math worksheet. "Hi, are you Dad's boss lady?" Olivia smiled, small and genuine. "I used to be. I'm Olivia." "I'm Ethan." He studied her with the unself-conscious directness of a 7-year-old. "You were on the island with my dad." "I was." "Did you help him come back?" "We helped each other." Ethan nodded, satisfied, and returned to his fractions. Crisis averted. Ryan gestured toward the small living room. "We should talk." "Yeah." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, an awkward distance between them. Olivia's hands twisted in her lap. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," she said. I needed to see you." "Why?" "Because I made a mistake. A huge, unforgivable mistake. And I've spent the last month trying to convince myself I made the right choice, and I can't. Because I didn't." Ryan's heart was hammering. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I was wrong about everything. About pushing you away. About choosing the company over—" She stopped, her voice breaking. "Over you." "Olivia, let me finish. Please." She took a shaky breath. "I've spent my entire life building walls, protecting myself, telling myself that being alone was safer than letting someone in. And then you—" Her eyes met his. "You saw through every single wall. You didn't let me hide. You didn't let me run, and that terrified me." "So you ran anyway." "I did, and I regret it every single day." Ryan wanted to stay angry, wanted to protect himself the way she'd protected herself, but looking at her now, vulnerable and honest and here, he couldn't. "What changed?" he asked. "I walked away from the company." Ryan's eyes widened. "You what?" "I resigned, sold my shares to the board. I'm done." "Why would you do that?" "Because you were right. That life, the corner office, the power, the control, it wasn't making me happy. It was just keeping me busy, keeping me from feeling anything." She moved closer. "I don't want to be alone anymore, Ryan. I don't want to be the person who chooses safety over living. What do you want?" I want to try. I want to see if what we had on that island can survive out here. I want to meet your son properly. I want to build something real with you, if you'll let me." Ryan's throat tightened. "You hurt me. You know that, right?" "I know, and I'll spend as long as it takes making it up to you, if you give me the chance." He should make her work for it, should make her prove she wouldn't run again the moment things got hard. But Ryan had learned something on that island. Life was too short, too unpredictable, too precious to waste on protecting yourself from the people who mattered. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared you'll change your mind, scared this won't work, scared of what it means for Ethan if we try and fail." "I'm scared too," Olivia said, "but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." Ryan reached out and took her hand. Her fingers closed around his, warm and real and here. "We take this slow," he said, "for Ethan's sake. He comes first. I wouldn't want it any other way. And if you feel yourself pulling away, if you get scared or overwhelmed, you talk to me. You don't disappear. I promise." Ryan pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, her face pressing into his shoulder, her hands gripping his shirt like she'd done on the island. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too." From the kitchen, Ethan called out, "Dad, I don't get number 7. Ryan and Olivia pulled apart, both smiling. "Duty calls," Ryan said. "Can I help? You any good at fractions?" "I ran a shipping empire. I think I can handle 3rd grade math." They moved to the kitchen together. Ethan looked up, surprised but not unhappy to see Olivia still there. "Do you know fractions?" he asked her. "Let's find out." She sat beside him, studying the worksheet with genuine interest. Ryan watched them, his son and the woman he'd fallen in love with in the most unlikely circumstances, and felt something settle in his chest. This wouldn't be easy. There would be hard conversations, adjustments, moments of doubt. The media would eventually find out. People would have opinions. But looking at Olivia explaining fractions to Ethan, seeing his son's face light up when he finally understood, Ryan knew it would be worth it. Later that night, after Olivia had left with a promise to come back the next day, Ethan asked the question Ryan had been waiting for. "Is she your girlfriend?" Ryan sat on the edge of Ethan's bed. "Maybe. Would that be okay?" Ethan thought about it with the seriousness he applied to all important decisions. "Is she nice to you?" "Very nice." "Does she make you happy?" "Yeah, she does." "Then it's okay." Ethan yawned, settling deeper into his pillow. "I like her. She's good at math." Ryan smiled, smoothing his son's hair back. "Get some sleep, kiddo." "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you came home." Ryan's throat tightened. "Me too." He turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his son sleep. Then he walked to the living room and picked up his phone. He typed out a message to Olivia. "Thank you for coming back." Her response came quickly. "Thank you for letting me." Ryan set the phone down and looked around his small apartment, at the life he'd built from nothing, at the home he'd created for his son. It wasn't much, but it was his. And now maybe it could be theirs. The next 6 months were a study in patience and compromise. Olivia rented a small apartment 3 blocks from Ryan's. She came over for dinner twice a week. She learned Ethan's routines, his likes and dislikes, the way he needed things explained twice before they stuck. She didn't try to be his mother, she just tried to be present. Ethan warmed to her gradually. He showed her his dinosaur collection, let her help with homework, asked her opinion on things that mattered to 7-year-olds, which superhero was strongest, whether pizza counted as a vegetable. Ryan watched it happen with something like wonder. Watched Olivia, the woman who'd run a billion-dollar company, sit cross-legged on his living room floor building Lego spaceships with his son. Watched her laugh at Ethan's terrible jokes. Watched her become part of their lives in small, unremarkable ways that mattered more than any grand gesture. They didn't hide their relationship, but they didn't advertise it either. When the media inevitably found out, the headlines were predictable. Survival romance, CEO, and employee find love after island ordeal. Ryan ignored them. So did Olivia. The people who mattered knew the truth, that they'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and chosen to hold on when it would have been easier to let go. On a Saturday in early May, almost a year after the shipwreck, Ryan took Olivia and Ethan to the beach. Not a tropical island, just the cold, rocky shore north of the city. But it was water and sky, and the three of them together. Ethan ran ahead, looking for shells, his laughter carried on the wind. Olivia slipped her hand into Ryan's. I never thought I'd want this. Want what? This. All of it. The quiet. The simple. She gestured at Ethan. The family. Is that what we are? She looked up at him, her eyes bright. I hope so. Ryan pulled her close, kissing her temple. Yeah, me too. Ethan ran back, holding out a shell, spiral-shaped, striped in shades of brown and cream, almost identical to the one from the tidal pool. Look what I found! Olivia took it, turning it over in her hands. It's beautiful. You can keep it if you want. Really? Yeah. Dad says we should give people things that remind us of them. And you like shells. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She crouched down to Ethan's level. Thank you. I'll keep it forever. Ethan grinned and ran off again back to his search. Ryan helped Olivia stand. You okay? Better than okay. She wiped her eyes, smiling. I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I didn't know I could feel like this. Like what? Like I finally found where I'm supposed to be. Ryan kissed her then, soft and unhurried, while the ocean whispered against the shore, and their son played in the distance. And for the first time in his life, Ryan wasn't thinking about what came next, wasn't planning or preparing or bracing for disaster. He was just here, in this moment, with the people who mattered. The island had taught him survival, but Olivia and Ethan had taught him something more important. They'd taught him that the strongest thing you could build wasn't walls to keep people out. It was bridges to let them in. And sometimes, the greatest risk wasn't opening yourself up to loss. It was choosing to love anyway, knowing that nothing was guaranteed, that storms would come, that life would throw you into the ocean and leave you fighting for breath. But if you found the right people, people who'd pull you back from the edge, who'd sit with you in the darkness, who'd choose you over and over even when it was hard, then maybe you didn't just survive. Maybe you lived. Really, truly lived. Ryan held Olivia's hand and watched his son play, and he knew with absolute certainty that he'd found his way home. Not to a place. To people. To a family built not from biology or obligation, but from choice and courage, and the simple, radical act of refusing to let fear win. The shell in Olivia's pocket, the laugh of his son on the wind, the warmth of her hand in his. These were the things worth fighting for. These were the things that made everything else, the shipwreck, the fear, the loss, worth surviving. And Ryan knew, standing on that beach with the two people who'd become his whole world, that he'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because some journeys don't end when you reach shore. Some journeys are just beginning. The knock came on a Saturday morning in late November, 4 months after Ryan had last seen Olivia on the dock in Taiwan. He was making pancakes, Ethan's favorite, with chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face, when someone rapped on the apartment door. Ryan wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened it. Olivia stood in the hallway, wearing jeans and a sweater he'd never seen before. Her hair was down, no makeup. She looked younger somehow, and terrified. "Hi," she said. Ryan couldn't speak. His hand gripped the doorframe. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. He stepped aside. Olivia walked past him, her eyes scanning the small apartment, the toys on the floor, the pancakes on the griddle, the life he'd rebuilt without her. From the kitchen, Ethan appeared, curious. "Dad, who's—" He stopped, recognizing her. "You're the lady from the island." Olivia smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I am. I'm Olivia. I'm Ethan." He studied her with the directness of a 7-year-old. "Did you come to visit my dad?" "That's okay with him." Ethan looked at Ryan, who managed a nod. "Cool. Can I have my pancakes now?" "Yeah, go ahead." Ethan disappeared back into the kitchen. Ryan gestured toward the small living room, and they sat on opposite ends of the couch. Olivia's hands twisted in her lap. "I know I have no right to be here." "Then why are you?" "Because I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life." She looked at him, and her eyes were red. "I chose wrong, Ryan, and I've been paying for it every day since." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You made your choice pretty clear in Taiwan." "I was scared. I was terrified of what it would mean for you, for Ethan, for the media circus. So I ran, just like I always do. And now I'm here, because I can't keep running from the only thing that's ever made me happy. Ryan wanted to stay angry, wanted to protect himself the way she'd protected herself. But looking at her now, raw and honest and sitting in his living room, he couldn't. "What changed?" he asked. Olivia took a shaky breath. "I went back to the company, buried myself in work, told myself I'd made the smart choice. But every board meeting, every decision, every moment alone in that corner office, all I could think about was you, about what we had on that island." She wiped her eyes. "I walked away from the company 2 weeks ago, resigned, sold my shares. I'm done." Ryan stared at her. "You left Carter Maritime." "It was never mine. It was my father's dream, not mine. And I finally realized that living someone else's dream was killing me." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Figure it out as I go." She moved closer. "But I know I want to do it near you. If you'll let me." Ryan's throat tightened. "You hurt me, Olivia. You know that?" "I know, and I'll spend however long it takes making it right. But I'm not asking you to trust me immediately. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I'm not running anymore." From the kitchen, Ethan called out, "Dad, the pancakes are burning!" Ryan stood quickly, catching the griddle just before smoke filled the apartment. He flipped the pancakes, slightly charred but salvageable, and plated them for Ethan. "Can Olivia stay for breakfast?" Ethan asked. Ryan looked back at her. She was standing in the doorway between the living room and kitchen, watching them with an expression that looked like longing. "You want to stay?" Ryan asked. "If that's okay." "Yeah, it's okay." They ate together at the small kitchen table, Ryan, Ethan, and Olivia. It was awkward at first, the silence heavy with everything unsaid. But then Ethan started talking about school, about his friend Marcus, who could burp the alphabet, about the science project he needed help with. Olivia listened like it was the most important conversation she'd ever had. She asked questions, laughed at Ethan's stories, didn't try to be anything except present. After breakfast, Ethan went to his room to play. Ryan and Olivia cleaned up together, their movements careful, deliberate. "He's wonderful," Olivia said, drying a plate. "Yeah, he is." "Thank you for letting me meet him properly." Ryan set down the dish he was washing. "I need to know you're serious about this, about us, because if you're going to change your mind again, I won't." "You don't know that." "You're right, I don't, but I'm willing to try, to fight for this instead of running from it." She set the towel down and turned to face him fully. "I've spent my whole life being afraid of needing someone. And then I met you, and you showed me that needing someone isn't weakness, it's just human." Ryan's resolve cracked. "I'm scared too. Scared of what happens if this doesn't work. Scared of what it means for Ethan." "Then we take it slow. We figure it out together, one day at a time." "No promises we can't keep." "No promises we can't keep," she agreed. Ryan reached out and took her hand. Her fingers closed around his, warm and real. "I missed you," he said quietly. "I missed you too." They stood like that for a long moment, holding hands over the kitchen sink. Two people who'd survived the impossible, trying to figure out if they could survive something even harder, building a life together. The next few months were a careful dance. Olivia rented an apartment nearby. She came over for dinner twice a week. She learned Ethan's routines, his quirks, the way he needed things explained before they made sense. She didn't try to replace anything. She just showed up, consistently, proving through action what words couldn't convey. Ryan watched her with his son, patient, genuine, unafraid of the mess and noise that came with a 7-year-old, and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't the CEO from the yacht. This was someone learning how to be part of something bigger than herself. One evening in March, after Ethan had gone to bed, Olivia and Ryan sat on the couch with coffee. Neither of them was drinking. "I talked to a lawyer," Olivia said. Ryan's stomach dropped. "About what?" "About custody arrangements. If we—" She hesitated. "If we make this permanent, I want to make sure Ethan's protected, that there's legal clarity about my role." Ryan stared at her. "You're thinking about legal custody?" "Not custody, just I want him to know I'm committed, to both of you. Olivia, I'm not trying to overstep. I just want to do this right. Ryan set down his coffee and pulled her close. You're already doing it right. She rested her head on his shoulder. I love you. I know I haven't said it, but I do. I love you too. Even after everything? Especially after everything. On a Sunday in May, Ryan took Olivia and Ethan to the beach north of the city. The water was cold, the sky overcast, but Ethan didn't care. He ran along the shore collecting shells. His laughter carried on the wind. Olivia slipped her hand into Ryan's. Thank you. For what? For giving me a second chance. For not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. Ryan squeezed her hand. You came back. That's what mattered. They walked together, watching Ethan play. After a while, Ryan pulled something from his pocket, the shell from the tidal pool, the one Olivia had found on the island. I kept this, he said, in case I came back. Yeah. Olivia took the shell, turning it over in her hands. I can't believe you held on to it. It mattered. You mattered. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. I want to marry you. Ryan's breath caught. What? Not now, not today, but someday. I want to marry you and be Ethan's stepmother and build a life that's ours. All of ours. Ryan pulled her into his arms. Yeah, someday. I want that too. Ethan ran back to them, holding out another shell, almost identical to the one Olivia held. Look, they match. Olivia crouched down. They do. Should we keep them together? Yeah, shells are better in pairs. She smiled, ruffling his hair. I think you're right. That night, after they'd driven home and Ethan had fallen asleep clutching both shells, Ryan and Olivia sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. I never thought I'd have this, Olivia said. A family. A home. Someone who sees me and doesn't run. I never thought I'd find someone who'd stay, Ryan replied. We found each other in the worst possible place. And we chose each other in the best possible way. Olivia kissed him, slow and certain. When they pulled apart, she smiled. I'm not going anywhere. Good, because neither am I. They sat together as the city lights blinked on outside, two people who'd been stranded and lost and broken, who'd found their way back not to where they'd been, but to where they were meant to be. The island had taught them survival, but love, messy, imperfect, human love, had taught them something more important, that the bravest thing you could do wasn't build walls to keep yourself safe. It was tear them down and let someone in, knowing they might hurt you, knowing nothing was guaranteed. Because at the end of the day, survival wasn't enough. Living, really living, meant taking the risk. And Ryan and Olivia had finally learned that some risks were worth everything.